Chapter 5. Rico grabbed a fistful of Dria's hair, yanking her head back slightly, shoving her face deep into the pillow, muffling her moans. When the intensity became too much, Dria lay down on the mattress, but before she could catch her breath, Rico grabbed her roughly by the waist, pulling her back up.
Did I say you could lay down?
Rico growled, pounding against her cheeks again. Finally, with one last grunt, Rico collapsed onto the bed beside her. As they lay there panting, Dria wrapped her arms and legs around him, gripping him like a vice. As his cell phone buzzed again, Dria snatched it from the nightstand, but Rico was quicker and grabbed it from her hands.
What'd I tell you about touching my phone?
Relax. I was just handing it to you because it keeps going off.
He flipped the phone open, and Dria stared at him as the small blue screen lit up his face.
I don't know why you're trying to keep your phone away from me. I already know you've been talking to some girl named Sonia.
She glared at him, waiting for a response. Rico was silent, so she continued.
Marisol told me you were all over her at Javier's party, the one I wasn't invited to.
It's not even like that.
He said flatly.
What is it like then? Because Marisol called earlier and said you shot up BBQs fighting over that girl.
Marisol don't know what she's talking about.
Rico made a mental note to speak to Javier about his girl Marisol running her mouth. Dria shifted away from Rico, frowning.
You've been ignoring me for weeks, and I know it's because of Sonny.
Why you always gotta start a fight? Every time I come over here, you complaining. You think I want to be around this?
Rage bubbled up in Dria.
You're the one lying and hiding stuff, running around with some girl, and I'm supposed to be okay with it?
You know what? I don't need this headache.
Rico said in a low, flat tone. Tears fell from Dria's eyes as she watched him stand up and put on his clothes. She pushed down her anger and lowered her tone.
I just want to know who this girl is.
Rico zipped up his jacket.
There's nothing to worry about. It's just business.
The savory smell of delicious food filled Sonia's house as she and her mother cooked Sunday dinner. Sonia stood in front of the stove, staring down at the bubbling grease. The chicken popped and sizzled as her mind drifted off, replaying the scene at the restaurant. Mrs. Brown's face, Donovan on the floor rumbling with Rico, and the horde of people running for the door at the sight of twins' gun.
Sonny,
Gloria sighed, taking the fork from her daughter's hand.
you letting my food burn up.
Gloria flipped the chicken over, and the bottom was burnt to a crisp. Gloria shook her head. Sorry, Ma.
It's okay. Just go over there and cut up the cornbread.
As Sonia cut the golden cornbread into big fat cubes, there was a knock at the front door. Sonia rushed to answer it, hoping it was Donovan, but Rico was standing there, staring at her with a sorrowful expression.
Hey.
He greeted cautiously, then smiled wide.
You that mad at me? You came out here looking for blood?
Sonia looked down at the butcher's knife still in her hand. I'm cooking with my mother right now. I can't really talk, she said coldly.
Oh, so you still ignore me?
I called you back earlier a bunch of times, and you didn't answer. He pulled her by the knife-free hand out of the doorway and onto the stoop.
I was asleep, but I've been calling you all weekend, and your mother keeps saying you can't come to the phone.
I've been busy.
Busy with Donovan?
Donovan's not speaking to me. She rolled her eyes.
Yo, what's all the attitude about?
You fought Donovan right in front of his mother. Then your cousin pulled out a gun.
Yeah, that was crazy. Sorry about that.
Rico, you knew what you were doing when you went inside.
Sonny, I have been thinking about you for weeks, waiting to see you again. Then, when I finally saw you, you left me to be with him. I ain't gonna lie, I was feeling some type of way. But you know I didn't mean to start a fight.
He moved his lips close to hers, and then, in his usual low, seductive tone, he said,
I just wanted to spend some time with you. I missed you. I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been kissing you one minute, then going to spend time with Donovan the next.
Look, don't worry about me and Donovan. We big boys. We'll be all right.
Sonia lifted her eyes to his, unable to resist his pull. She had mentally rehearsed her speech all day. She had planned to cut off Rico for good, but once she felt his arms around her and was staring into his eyes, his smooth words had her melting, and she couldn't understand how she ever thought of leaving him alone. Donovan never called Sonia back, and they didn't speak again until Monday, when 2 police officers escorted Sonia from a chemistry class to the principal's office. As she stepped into the office, Donovan was sitting there, looking heated but not bothering to look over at her.
Sonia, do you know why you're here?
Principal Ciafalo started. No, Sonia mumbled. One of the cops said,
Your friends were involved in an altercation at a restaurant on Friday. We were told they had guns. We need the names.
A lump rose in Sonia's throat. She shook her head. I don't know. The officer shot her look. Then the principal said in a stern voice,
Donovan's mother informed us that you introduced the boys at the restaurant, but she couldn't recall their names. If you know who they are, you need to tell the officers.
I don't know their real names, just nicknames.
Donovan's mother said you all went to school together, but you don't remember their names?
The shorter cop asked suspiciously. They were like 3 years ahead of me, she said innocently.
Well, what are the nicknames?
The officer asked, pulling out a small notepad. One is called Booney, and the other is Tay. After Sonia and Donovan were finally released from questioning, Donovan walked so swiftly up the hall that Sonia had to jog to catch up to him. She called his name, but he didn't respond. Just continued his quick stride like he was on a mission to get as far away from her as possible. Donovan, wait, she said, catching up just as he was about to turn the corner. Are you going to ignore me for the rest of the year? He turned, looking her dead in the eye.
Are you cheating on me with Rico?
No.
So he started all that the other day over nothing.
He didn't start anything. You got in his face. He let out a sarcastic laugh, shaking his head.
You for real?
I'm not blaming you, but you did jump up, and you hit him first.
Sonny, he came in there disrespecting my mother and me.
Donovan was looking at her like he was pleading for Sonia to be on his side, but she didn't budge. Then he knew for sure and said with a nod,
I know you cheating on me with Rico. I can't prove it, but I know.
His voice was low and tight. I can't believe you're acting like this after I forgave you for what you did.
This is nowhere near the same thing. If Kim put a gun on you, I never would speak to her again. But you brought him to my dinner. You introduced him to my mother.
I didn't bring him there. He came in on his own.
And how did he know you was there?
He gave us a ride, she mumbled. He nodded, glaring at her.
Yeah, like I thought.
He started walking away again, then said over his shoulder,
Go be with Rico and stop wasting my time.
Sonia thought about going after him, apologizing and explaining herself, but she didn't see the point. As the sun set on Saturday evening, Sonia impatiently waited for what was supposed to be her first official date with Rico. But as she stepped out of the house, she was met with Javier's truck, packed with Rico's crew. Disappointed, Sonia climbs into the truck, moving past a silent Yanni, going back to the third row, where she sat between Rico and some boy named Blue. After a short ride, they pulled up to a dark, scary-looking park beneath the George Washington Bridge. Dark, dirty water splashed against the crumbling concrete dock as reflections of the city lights danced on the water's black surface. Sonia was a little creeped out by the blaze, but at the same time, she felt oddly at peace. As the chilly wind sliced through her thin camisole, she knew she should have worn a jacket, but she was trying to be cute for her date, thinking Rico would take her to the movies or maybe somewhere to eat, not to some sketchy-looking park in the middle of the night. As Sonia stood alone at the water's edge, she glanced over her shoulder looking for Rico. He was busy digging into a cooler while speaking to Twin. Javier, Lucky, and Blue were huddled together, talking in front of the truck. Sonia couldn't hear them, but they looked like they were having some kind of serious conversation. She looked away from them quickly, not wanting any repeats of the dramatic outbursts from Lucky, like they had in the classroom, or any fierce death stares from Javier, like that night at the party. Sonia shook her head. Rico had brought her out on a date with a bunch of people who seemed to hate her. Speaking of people who hated her, Yanni was in the driver's seat of the truck, messing around with the stereo. After finally selecting the CD of her choice, Yanni cranked up the volume, sending the sound of Maya's song Best of Me throughout the empty park. It had been an entire week since Sonia had spoken to Yanni and Ebony. She ate lunch alone or with Anna. It had been the longest time she'd gone without speaking to her friends. Even after being shot, the girls were there at the hospital before the doctors cleared Sonia for visitors. Being away from Yanni and Ebony transported Sonia right back to her sad little life before luring them. Like a cruel reminder of the days when she had no friends at all. Growing up, the only friends Sonia had consisted of her parents, her granny, and her cousin Anna. Not only had Sonia grown up friendless, but the kids just flat out didn't like her. She never understood why though. She tried her best to be kind, generous, and offer a helping hand, just like her parents taught her. But little did she know, out in the real world, kindness was a weakness. And it quickly made her into a target. So every day was a battle for her. Sweet Sonia, the easy mark. Especially when the kids realized she wouldn't speak up for herself or fight back. By junior high, she learned her lesson and became a shadow, disappearing into herself to escape their cruelty. Just keeping her head down, doing her homework, and staying out of the way. By high school, every day was just a countdown to graduation and into the 4-year prison sentence. That was until she was forced into a group project with Yanni and Ebony. Sonia had expected the usual routine, her doing all the work while the other group members sat by giggling and gossiping. But Yanni and Ebony were different. There were no snide remarks or arrows. They just adopted her into their little crew, no questions asked. Yanni cranked the truck stereo up even higher, snapping Sonia back to reality. As Yanni climbed from the truck, she began moving her hips to the music. When Sonia realized that Yanni caught her looking, she quickly turned around and stared out at the pitch-black water.
If I knew you was coming, I would have stayed home.
Yanni smiled, stepping over to her. Sonia smiled too. Nobody forcing you to come over here. Go talk to your new sister-in-law. She nodded toward Lucky. Yanni laughed.
Whatever.
Then an awkward silence fell between them. Yanni's tone turned serious when she said,
Eb told me some cops snatched you out of your class the other day.
Yeah, they asked me about Twin and Rico. I gave them some fake names though. Yanni looked relieved. So you and Ab speaking again?
Me and Eb was speaking again that same night. You the only one holding grudges.
Donovan and his mother hate me now.
They'll get over it.
Yanni rolled her eyes dismissively.
And why is Donovan acting all high and mighty? I'm telling you, Sonny, he was all over Kim. I know they did something that night.
Sonia hesitated before finally admitting. He did get with her. He told me everything when I asked him about it a few months ago. Yanni stared at her, eyes bulging out her head.
Sonny, why didn't you tell me?
You know why. Because you hated Donovan after that, and I knew you would just keep telling me to leave him.
Yeah, because you should have.
Sonia glanced back at Rico, making sure he was still out of earshot. After I lost my father, I couldn't think of losing Donovan too. Being alone just seemed way too scary. So even after finding out about Kim, I just forgave him. She shook her head. Yanni was fuming all over again, just like the night she came stomping into Sonia's bedroom with the news, like she was ready to fight Donovan herself.
I still can't believe him. And right after you got shot and lost your father.
He said it only happened one time. She said, like that was somehow better.
Sonny, please stop taking up for him. I don't care how sorry he acted. He shouldn't have did it.
She shook her head. Then, in a low voice filled with regret, she said,
The only reason I hooked y'all up is because I thought he was a good dude. He was my best friend back in junior high, and he was so sweet back then. But I guess a lot has changed. He got a little height on him and started feeling himself.
She joked, trying to lighten the mood. As the girls laughed, their attention shifted to Rico and Twin, who were speaking loud, still standing back by the cooler.
I'm happy you moved on. You and Rico are a good match, and you know I'm good at picking up on people's vibes. I can tell he's gonna treat you like a princess.
Yanni smiled. Twin stepped over to the girls, pushing champagne glasses into their hands. Then he popped the cork, and an explosion of suds ran down his hands as he filled their glasses.
Twin, where'd the Javier bring us?
Yanni asked, rolling her eyes.
Never been here before?
No, I never been to this bummy part.
Yanni said, turning up her nose. She slipped her champagne.
This is good.
For $300 a bottle, it better be.
He said, drinking straight from the bottle. I don't drink, Sonia said as she tried to hand the glass back to Twin.
At least try it. $300 a bottle.
Twin repeated, smiling. He saw Sonia's hesitation, then added,
Plus, it's not like it's really even alcohol. It's just champagne.
Sonia took a small, careful sip. Then her face balled up in disgust. She didn't understand how anybody could enjoy that, or ever pay $300 for it. Then she sipped it again, giving it another try. Tiny bubbles slid down her throat, tickling up into her nose. The more she drank, the better it tasted and the better she felt. Sonia slipped away from Yanni and Twin, giving them privacy, as he smudged his cold wet lips against Yanni's neck, making her giggle. Instead of joining Rico, who was talking with his friends, Sonia walked down the pier, sipping her drink and stepping further into the darkness. Lucky said to Rico with an attitude,
Javier said he can't get Blue the job with his uncle.
Okay, what you want me to do about that?
Rico laughed.
Come on, y'all making enough money to put Blue on.
Rico and Javier shot her fierce glares, warning her to keep her mouth shut. Blue caught their stares, wrapped his arm around Lucky, then said,
Baby, it's all good. It was nice of you to ask, but we didn't come out here for no job interviews, did we?
He hugged her from behind, making Lucky smile. Her mood instantly flipped as the two walked over to the water. Javier sighed, shaking his head.
Y'all need to talk to her about running her mouth about my uncle's business.
Lucky can't run her mouth because she don't know nothing.
She know we getting money. You let her down in the basement where we agree no one wants to go.
The washer and dryer's down there.
Rico laughed.
My aunt goes down there all the time too. Neither one of them care. As long as the bills is paid and I slide them some cash, they don't ask no questions.
I still think we should move the bank. Having all that money down there is like waiting for somebody to come and rob us.
Lucky and my aunt ain't stupid enough to tell nobody about the bank.
You sure? She already told Blue we getting paid, working for my uncle.
Rico shook his head.
You worry too much. Everything is good.
Rico assured him before joining Sonia down the pier. He wrapped his arms around Sonia, hugging her from behind.
Why you down here by yourself looking mad?
She pulled away slightly, then turned to look at him. When you said we was going on a date, I thought it would be just you and me.
But you still glad you came, right?
Yeah. She sighed, sipping her champagne.
Since when do you drink?
He chuckled. Since tonight. And it's not really drinking, since I can't get drunk from champagne.
Champagne to get you drunk faster.
He laughed, taking her glass. Rico finished off her last gulp of champagne.
How you doing? You cold?
He asked, running his hands down her thigh. I'm good.
You sure? We can go get in the truck.
He said in a low seductive voice. She smiled, shaking her head no.
We together?
He seemed to ask the question out of nowhere. Yeah, she said it like it was obvious. Then, when she tried to kiss him, he leaned away slightly.
It's all because you want to be with me? Or because he ain't talking to you?
She sighed, because I want to be with you. He gave her a slow nod, then kissed her deeply, sucking champagne from her tongue. A high-pitched scream and a splash interrupted their kiss. They looked up the pier, where the truck's lights illuminated the filthy water. Lucky was splashing around, screaming out.
Help me! Somebody get me out!
Twin and Javier stood there laughing, while Yanni seemed like the only person concerned.
Somebody get her out.
Yo, just stand up. The water's only 3 feet over here.
Javier called to her. Lucky stood and the water barely reached her chest. Finally, Blue waded into the water and helped her out.
Her smells so bad.
Lucky cried as muddy water dripped from her clothes.
That's because the river's filled with dead bodies.
Twin laughed. Lucky stumped off to Javier's truck, killing the music and demanding that they take her home. Sonia and Rico returned to her house around 2 in the morning. Her block was dead quiet. The only sound cutting through the silence was Javier's stereo blasting as he drove down the street, disturbing the peace. They stood beside the door, kissing slowly, yet with intensity. Rico moved his hands down her back, then over the V of her lap. In the darkness on the stoop, Rico slid his fingers back and forth, rubbing her over the thin material of her pants. Then, Rico pulled Sonia's hand onto his lap so she could feel the throbbing stiffness beneath his jeans.
You think your mom's asleep?
She's down in D.C. Rico smiled.
Yo, why didn't you say something earlier? You could have just came here.
He was already moving to the door. You didn't want to take me out? She laughed.
We could have gone out some other time.
It doesn't matter anyway. My mother doesn't want you in the house. He looked offended.
She said that?
Yep. She saw your new car the other day and told me to be careful. Told me to make sure I wasn't running around in a stolen car and not to let you in her house.
You know it's not stolen.
He said defensively. Yeah, I know.
Why don't you want me in her house? 'Cause of that thing at BBQ's?
She doesn't even know about the fight. I just think she doesn't like you.
After your mother spends some time with me, get to know me a little, she'll like me.
He nodded confidently. Sonia didn't know about that.
Let's go inside.
He pleaded. I told you, my mother said no.
So, she's in D.C., remember?
He laughed, hooking his arm around Sonia and moving her to the door. Moved by his pleading eyes, Sonia pulled out her keys. As they stood in the middle of her bedroom, Rico pulled Sonia's purse from her hand. She had been standing there clutching it tight ever since they walked in, like she was stuck on pause. He tossed her purse, then kissed her, his tongue snaking deep into her mouth as he moved her to the bed, unbuckling his jeans. Rico's kisses lied. He had always kissed Sonia with so much intensity and passion that it aroused her body and thoughts, having her mind run wild with expectations of the most loving, intense sex she'd ever have. But this wasn't it. Unlike his kisses, which always left her weak in the knees, there was no passion now, and no seduction either. It was like Rico was on fast forward the whole time. There was zero foreplay, and he moved so fast, everything felt like a blur. It was like they had gone from the front door to the bed within seconds, and now he was on top of her, inside of her, moving in and out with a roughness that made her wince. She clutched his back as he moved quickly, staring down at her. Uncomfortable was an understatement. Even though the room was dim, lit only by the street light that spilled in through the sheer curtains, it seemed like Sonia was under a spotlight. Feeling like she was on display, Sonia laid there feeling shy and even a little embarrassed. She wanted to hide her face as she lay there exposed in every way. She pulled Rico down closer onto her chest and pushed her face against his neck, hiding from his gaze. Rico mistook her pulling him closer as a sign that his stroke was driving her wild. The little surge of motivation had him moving faster and pounding even harder. Sonia fantasized about this moment every time he kissed her and spoke to her seductively on the phone. Her fantasies had been so much better. She lay beneath him, trying to convince herself that this is what she wanted. He was Rico Alvarez, and he had chosen her.
Like that?
He asked smugly, pushing her leg up behind her head, moving deeper inside. Yeah, she said breathlessly, gripping his back tighter as he sped up. Her French-tip nails dug deeper into his flesh, then suddenly the uncomfortable thrashing gave way to pleasure. She didn't know what did it. Him lifting her leg the way he did, feeling his warm breath against her ear, or the sound of his deep rumbling voice filling her bedroom. But she was starting to feel that same warmth moving off through her, like she felt a few weeks ago when Rico snuck into her room and buried his face between her legs. She closed her eyes tighter, opened her legs wider, and grabbed his waist, pulling him into her. After school on Monday, Sonia was surprised to see Yanni and Lucky laughing it up outside. She was even more surprised when they invited her and Ebony to go shopping. "Since when are you friends with Lucky?" Sonia asked Yanni in a whisper as they walked.
I stayed over Twins' house last night, and after falling in the water, that little psycho was actually acting sort of cool.
Yanni laughed. Sonia was surprised by how nonchalant Yanni was about it. Like the girls weren't just trying to beat each other down a few weeks ago. They took a dollar cab down to Madison Avenue, where Sonia's eyes bulged as Yanni and Lucky bought expensive shoes and accessories, handing over thousands of dollars in cash. Yanni's eyes glazed with pleasure as she shopped, spending cash like it was nothing. But Sonia remembered just a few months ago when Yanni had sworn up and down that she would never waste money again. Not after she'd blown through all the money her father gave her.
Y'all want something?
Lucky asked. Without a second thought, Ebony snatched up a purple snakeskin mini bag. "I'm good. This stuff is too expensive." Sonia shook her head.
But it's so cute.
Lucky smiled, holding up a small leather purse. Sonia ran her fingers over the bag's shiny gold hardware. It looked beautiful, sophisticated, expensive. She shook her head. "It's $650.
That's nothing. Rico gave me more than enough. Told me to take you shopping.
Lucky said, with a grin.
Oh, I forgot to tell you that part. He gave me some money for us to share.
Sonia narrowed her eyes on Lucky and asked, "How much?"
6 G's to split, but now I think we're down to just 2.
Lucky pulled a water catch from her purse, handing it to Sonia. As soon as Sonia stepped through the door, her mother's voice cut through the air.
Sonia.
"Did you have fun in D.C.?" Sonia smiled, making her way to the living room. But as she got closer, her smile faded. Gloria's angry expression was growing clearer with each step.
Miss Samuels called. She told me she saw you and some boy coming to my house at 2 in the morning. Said you showed up in some truck blasting music.
"Sorry, Ma."
Sonia, I specifically told you not to let him in here.
"I know. Sorry. It will happen again."
Oh, I know it won't. And you're on punishment for a month.
"Punishment?" She said the word like it was a foreign language.
Yes, I want you straight home every day after school.
I'm almost 18.
I don't care how old you are. It's my house, and I said you're on punishment. That means no phone either.
The next day, instead of going to her third period class, Sonia slid past the guard and escaped to Rico's awaiting car.
What's up? You good?
Rico asked, concerned.
I kept calling you yesterday, but your mother said you couldn't come to the phone.
"Yeah, she found out you came in the house the other night, and she grounded me." Rico couldn't help but laugh.
Grounded you?
He saw the seriousness in her eyes and smothered his laughter.
How long you grounded for?
He asked, pulling off. "A month, as she said I can't talk on the phone either."
Hi. So we'll go get you your own phone. We'll get you something nice.
He looked over at her with a smile.
One of those new joints with the cameras built in them.
Sonia smiled weakly, returning her gaze out the passenger window. "I wanted to thank you yesterday for the money, but my mother confiscated the phone."
It was nothing.
"Why'd you give it to me?" she asked, glancing over at him. He laughed.
I need a reason to give my girls money.
"I'm just saying, $2,000 is a lot of money. Well, $3,000 before your cousin stole some of it."
Lucky was supposed to give you 4.
He shook his head. "Either way, that's a crazy amount of money." Sonia paused before asking, "What do you do for that politician to make so much?"
Mostly just running errands. Simple stuff.
He shrugged, then smiled and changed the subject.
After we get the phone, we can go back to your place before your moms get off.
"I can't. She was so mad. I'm surprised all she did was ground me. She said she wants me to go straight home after school."
Look, don't worry about all that. We'll see each other just like we did today. You leave school early and I pick you up.
Sonia smiled with a nod. Rico took her to a singular wireless shop, purchasing the most expensive plan they had. Forget free nights and weekends. He signed her up for a plan with unlimited anytime minutes. After they picked up the cell phone, they grabbed a quick lunch in Midtown. Then they headed up to Harlem, where Rico parked on Adam Clayton Powell. He told Sonia to come with him while he made a quick run. They went into a shop whose sign simply read, "Herbs, incense, candles." Jars filled with dried plants lined the shelves, and colorful candles in tall glass jars sat along the counters. Sonia's eyes darted around the shop as she followed closely behind Rico, who casually just walked behind the counter like he owned the place. Rico gave a quick nod to the old man at the register. The little old man with stark white hair stared at Sonia suspiciously as she followed Rico into the back. Even though white sheets were draped all over the walls, the small back room still seemed dark. In the back of the room sat a table topped with another white sheet, and on the table were a bunch of half-melted candles, plates of food, and glasses of drink. As she stepped closer, she saw small white feathers stuck to the bloody blotches. Her attention was pulled away from the weird table when a small older lady stepped into the room. Rico introduced Sonia to a woman who looked like she was in her 60s and dressed in all white. The lady, called Mama Yaya, smiled at Sonia.
Welcome, child. Rico talks about you all the time.
Sonia smiled a little, glancing over at Rico, who nodded encouragingly. Nice to meet you too. Sonia didn't know why her voice was coming out in a squeak, but suddenly she was feeling anxious and shy. It was something about the woman that made Sonia feel off. Despite her warm demeanor, Sonia felt a chill. The lady turned to Rico and asked,
How did everything work out?
Perfect as usual.
He turned to Sonia and said,
She can work miracles.
Not me, the ancestors.
She smiled, taking him by the arm and walking across the room where the two talked privately. Back in the car, Sonia reclined in her seat a little, staring out the window. I didn't think you were serious when you told me about her. What made you go see her?
Me and Twin broke into her shop. We went in the register, but it was empty, so we smashed up the place. Then, the next day when we got home, she was sitting in the house talking to my aunt. Me and Twin had to go back and clean up. We asked how she knew where we stayed, and she told us some spirits told her. We started cracking up, thinking she was crazy. Then, she started telling us a bunch of stuff about us that only we knew.
Rico smiled.
And now, she helps me get whatever I ask for.
What kind of stuff do you ask for?
Money for one. I told her I wanted to make serious dough. Next thing I know, Javier's uncle popped up out of nowhere, offering him a job. Then, Javier put us on too. Now we making crazy money.
You think she can help me speak to my father? Rico glanced at her, then shook his head.
Nah, you asking for some other stuff. We go to her for cash, protection, stuff like that. I wouldn't get into any of that speaking to the dead stuff.
Gloria was standing in the kitchen, washing dishes, when she looked out the window just in time to see Sonia climbing out of Rico's car. Her hands froze mid-scrub, watching the Lexus peel down the street. When Sonia stepped into the house, Gloria was standing in the kitchen doorway, her face scrunched in anger. Hey, Ma, Sonia greeted cautiously.
I saw you get out of that boy's car.
He gave me a ride home.
I told you that you were on punishment.
Yeah, you said no phone and no company. He just gave me a ride. Gloria glared at Sonia. Then, silently, she made her way up the hall to the living room, with Sonia following slowly behind. Gloria sat in the recliner, as Sonia stood awkwardly, avoiding her mother's eyes. Anger radiated off of Gloria, and Sonia knew that her mother's silence was more dangerous than her shouting. When Gloria finally spoke, her voice contained no anger. Instead, it was gentle, sounding more like she was concerned.
Sonia, like you said yesterday, you are almost 18, which means I can't keep you locked up in the house. But you need to start making better decisions. I won't ground you, but you better not let that boy back in my house.
Her voice was stern again. I promise I won't.
I trust you.
She stared into her daughter's eyes.
Your father and I raised you to be smarter than this. Please don't let us down. Don't let yourself down.